Well, out of the box, there are two different quote processes. This quote.e is used to build up, let's call it an engineering estimating quote. I'm going to create a new part number for a customer. So I need to determine the materials to be used and the cost of those materials. And I need to determine the labor to be used and the cost of that labor with overheads. I roll all that up, I mark it up by a percentage, and I send that quote to the customer. That's option one. Option two is there's an SO quote screen, which is more of a sales order type thing. Okay, so this would be a quote where I would say, I'm going to quote this customer. And if I want to look up an existing quote, I can look up by customer, contact, part, prospect, name, RFQ, address, or sales order. Or if I'm creating a new one, I just hit enter. And that assigns the next sequential quote number. The load option, you'll see the load option scattered throughout the system. That just means I can load one quote into another. In other words, I quoted something 3 months ago for this customer, and now somebody else wants it, or this person wants an updated version. You can either update the original quote, or you can load it into a new one and go forward from there. So that's up to you. Here I would just say Ron, and then I can quote to a prospect, or I can quote to a customer, or I can skip both and type in the name and address. You have to use a customer by the time you get to a sales order, but for quoting purposes, we let you do any of them. But if I pick Evan again as that quote, I'll just keep picking that guy. So it pops up the information. I could put in an RFQ number if they're giving me an RFQ. I could put an estimated close and a reason code. Do I want to price this based on a markup percent from cost or the price file? Most people use the price file if they have it. I don't think you may or may not be using currency codes, sales reps, notes that will print on the quote, confidential notes that I want to log on this quote, but I never want the customer to see it, so it will not print on the quotes. So if you want to call the customer any names, use the field on the right. And then there's two different line items. There's summary line and detail line. So I can go to the detail line and I can say, okay, I'm going to quote part number, that part, and I can put in notes. I can change the description. It shows me the cost. I think I've got it set to load up quantity breaks. I have a predefined set of quantity breaks in a control record. You don't have to do that, or you can have whatever you like. And then I've got a pricing matrix that changes based on the quantity. So looks like 25 and above is $120, but it goes down depending on what the prices are. And then I can put specific dates and quantities if I know what the customer's asking for. Kind of rare, you really don't know when you're going to get the order. So you can put something like, 21 days after receipt of order, something like that. So the customer knows they can't have it the day after they ask you to send it to them. And down here in the bottom right, it shows me which sales orders this has been loaded to. So that's just a reference. And then if you want to ship to certain places, or you want to set UPS ground versus UPS blue versus anything else, you can set that. If you want to set up a freight amount, you're going to lock it. You want to tax the freight. That's usually a state-by-state decision there. And then sales tax if there is any. And then I can just say, okay, that's what I needed. I quoted this thing. I can save this. And now I can say, when I save this, I've got a control record set to say, allow me to print the quote and allow me to email the quote to any one of the contacts in the customer record. You may remember these 3 names from the cus.q. They all had email addresses. So it picks them all up. So I could email to Sean, or I could print the quote also, and I can email the quote to Ron. I just don't want to send it to Vern for whatever reason. So you can control that. And then I'm going to cancel it because my printing it won't do you any good. And that creates quote number 1058, and that goes off to the customer. Now, if I look at that quote, which if I take it real, I'll find it on the menu rather than type it in. I can get down to SOs. So quote.f2. And so this is a typical output screen. I'm going to go to PDF viewer so we can see it on screen, but I could also email this, send it to a file, or send it to any one of my printers. Regular reports have even more options like Excel and Word, but because this is a PDF document, we only have a limited amount of areas where we can send it to. So I could send it to 1058. I'm going to print this form. It sends a signal off to the server to generate it, and then the server sends it back up to me. And there's the quote. There's the quote number, the valid days, the customer, all this information. I got to fix this customer. Somebody put a 10% discount. I keep having to live with that. So if you have quantity breaks, there will be no total on the bottom of the quote because it doesn't know which quantity they're accepting. If there's only one quantity and price per line item, it will give you a total quote price at the bottom. So it depends on how you set this up. So then the customer calls and says, hey, great, I'll take it. All right, so what we do now is we go over to sales order entry and we're saying we're going to create a sales order for this. And the easiest thing to do is to click into the quote number field, enter that quote number. Now you can look it up if you don't remember what it was. But if I know what it was, I can put it in and hit enter, and it'll populate all the information for me. Now we don't bring over the date and the quantity because we don't know which one they selected. So you have to fill in this information. I'm going to leave it as today because since it's a one-day demo, I'm going to be able to ship it today and say they asked for 4 of them, and based on 4 of them, I can change the price and I'll say yes. So that's it. That turned that quote into an order. I could put in a PO number if I wanted to have a PO in there. I could put a type code on it, all this information, and it brings over all the detail lines with the images and the parts and the notes and finished good locations, etc. I get a chance, one last chance to change the shipping method or the delivery address in case that's changed. I could drop ship this. I could say whether it's commercial or residential. And then when I save this, I have a check to say if any invoices are more than 14 days past due, warn the entry person and give them a chance to put it on hold. You can remove this warning and just flat put it on hold, and then accounting can get a notification that there's a credit hold, and they can either release it or contact the customer to say, hey, take some action on this. But I'm not going to put it on hold because it brings it to a grinding halt here. So now the other thing I have set up in this demo account is I have this sales order and this part set up to auto generate a work order. So because I set this up as a make to order environment, it auto generated a shop floor work order. This is optional. You don't have to turn it on. You can turn it on. You can do it by part or you can do it across the board. There's a whole bunch of options here. And I've got a control record set up with all these print options. And it gave me number 932. I'm going to write this down because I'm horrible with numbers. So it created that work order. And then I get a chance to print the sales order or email the sales order or fax the sales order or print a pick list. Or again, shipping and sales can be like a 1-step to about a 4 or 5-step process, depending on how involved you want to be. Do you want an accounting approval? Do you want a manager approval? Do you want to scan the parts as they go into the box before you can release it? There's all kinds of things you can put in play, but most people use a 1-step just because it's easier. And it gives me 5063 as my sales order number.